We're good. That's the case, then we'll go ahead and move on with item number 2, which is the agreement with Davis County, and I think the board's going to present that to us and let us know what the status is.
All right. I've got a copy of the PowerPoint that I'll present later with council.
That's why I
So you've probably heard some discussions, and we've talked a little bit about this before in some previous meetings. I believe it came up in our budget discussion. We've talked about this, and now is the time to bring before you the agreement within Davis County for all the different fire departments. So in this, just to give you a little bit of a background on this, and I'll share this again in the regular meeting. The history of EMS goes back to when 1978, when Davis County Sheriff's was providing ambulance transportation and began their paramedic service at that time. Layton City, we began ambulance transportation services in 1994. And then in 2001, we began our paramedic service, and we were the only other provider of paramedic service in the county besides the county sheriffs. Davis County Sheriff's Office is now making the decision to discontinue ambulance service. Or excuse me, in 2002 they discontinued ambulance service, and that's when the other entities began picking up the ambulance service at that point. And then in 2005, South Davis Metro was created with the Bountiful Fire Department and South Davis Fire Department combined to create the South Davis Metro Fire Authority down there. And so they began, that was part of their agreement, was to begin to provide paramedic service as well. So now we had 3 providers in the county. Well, as that's evolved with time and with service levels and response time concerns and things like that, and just a transition of the service of paramedic service delivery, in 2023, the Davis County Sheriff's Office is going to discontinue paramedic service to the other cities that we provided ours and within our area, and then South Davis for the 5 cities to the south. So currently, the way that it runs with the funding that comes through the county, we receive a mill levy amount in December, and as part of the agreement when South Davis entered in. Previous to that, we had not received any funds for our paramedic service at all. So that was great to all of a sudden begin to get some funding for that. And that funding was to pay for 4 units with the Davis County Sheriff's Department, and 2 for Layton City, and really 2 for South Davis Metro. They opted about 2 years ago to start to provide they actually put a 3rd paramedic unit in service, and just without any additional funding change. So that's why it says that there's 9 paramedic units and 8 that are really partially funded, because obviously what we receive from the mill levy doesn't cover all the costs of services. So just a little background on the provision of services. The ambulances are staffed with an EMT advanced emergency medical technician advanced level. And so you can see the hours requirement there is anywhere from 96 to 140 hours of training, and then there's some clinical training included in the field of about 10 to 20 hours. And at the intermediate level, they can provide some a minimal amount of advanced life support services, including IV access and some limited amount of medication. And all of our ambulances are currently licensed by the state at that level. The EMT paramedic, the paramedic level is anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 hours of training, and over 700 hours of what we call our clinical internship, the clinical training in the field, where they ride out in the field with paramedics and have a certain amount of skill set they have to go through and get signed off by the preceptors. We actually operate as one of the main training grounds for both Weber State and Utah Valley University's paramedic program. They send our students up there, so we get a chance to get a good look at them too and work with them to make sure they're good to go. So currently that is the highest level of what we call EMT training in the state, and this is our advanced airway techniques, including innovation. We have some additional skills that we do here within our fire department here, as our paramedics are a little bit higher, we have some higher skill level training than most of the other agencies throughout the state. So there's a lot more drugs that are carried. Really a lot of emphasis on dealing with cardiac patients, and again, that's a lot more comprehensive So,
Excuse me,
yes,
where's everybody gonna fit in this? All the paramedics.
where are the
If I
paramedics?
say a paramedic in Clinton, where does he fit here?
Well, they currently, all the other ambulance providers in the county are licensed as EMT ambulances. The paramedic units will be, when the paramedics come in with these other cities, they'll actually operate on a paramedic rescue. And now the exception, like a separate squad, as we would call it, kind of a modified pickup truck with a utility box in the back. If any of you were old enough to remember the old Emergency TV show or seen the reruns. That's a paramedic squad. We initially started with that, and then we actually made the decision to move to a paramedic engine company, which allows our paramedics to continue their skills as they progress and get promoted. A lot of other departments, when you promote to engineer, you no longer function as a paramedic. You're driving the engine. In the squad, it's the paramedic squad. Or you promote to captain, and you can't utilize your skills anymore because they're not on a paramedic unit. So this allows us to retain our paramedics, retain their skills, have a higher number of paramedics, have more extra hands when we have, occasions where we obviously have to have a lot more advanced life support providers and paramedics on scene. So it's just, that's our philosophy within Layton City.
Okay,
As well as
our is Layton City.
Yes, ours is Layton City.
Everybody.
Now, the other exception to that though is South Davis Metro actually operates paramedic engines as well. So they operate under the same model that we do. The other cities are going to operate differently with the squad, which is fine. That's their decision. We just didn't want to have them just hire trained paramedics and put them on the ambulance, because we know that about 50% of our calls don't require, in transportation-wise, don't require a paramedic to board, and so that would tie up the paramedic unit a lot more with some basic level calls, some lower acuity calls that their paramedic could be handling that an EMT advanced could easily handle. Go ahead.
I think an important point, is I think this gets to your question, Dave, is that we've chosen to run paramedic engines. Other entities run paramedic squads, like Chief was talking about.
Right.
And one's not necessarily, they both have pros and cons associated. We have to think this provides the most cons for us. The key, we think, with this agreement, one of the keys, is that the competency level and the training level of all the medics, whether they run in squads or whether they run on engines, will become consistent across the county. That's one of the goals of this effort, is to raise.
So it's going to raise the level of. Okay.
Yeah, now we're already there. Some other areas don't have quite that now, but
Sure.
they'll be able to facilitate, through
Right.
the revenue they generate, setting up their own systems. They'll have ownership of that. But so it's not as important about how they deliver it as what's being delivered, right? Because there's effective models that work.
And typically, if we were running a bunch of squads, we'd have to have a lot of additional personnel, frankly. And a lot of places that use squads, it's because they cover a very large service area. That's what they use in Weber County, just because they have fewer paramedic units and a much larger geographic area they have to cover, 453 square miles. So they have squads that they use up there. So this, for our city and for South Davis, this works excellent. And it's a very accepted paramedic engine practice around a lot of different states.
Chief, I have a quick question on the comparison of services.
Uh-huh.
Is it, when a call comes in, is that how it's designated, as whether it'll be EMT advanced or paramedics that are dispatched?
Yeah, our dispatchers are trained in something called priority dispatch, and based on the call taker information they get, or the call taker gets from the caller, they decide, do we just send an ambulance, because this is probably they have different levels, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo. And so Alpha and Bravo call levels are lower acuity calls that typically all we do is send an ambulance on that. So that's where we don't plan for
So give an
paramedics.
example of that, Chief. What's a typical Alpha Bravo call?
Just might be somebody that's just an illness or sick, or maybe it's a simple fracture, simple fall injury with maybe just back pain or something like that would be like an Alpha level. Bravo might be just something a little bit more than that. Maybe the fracture's a little more compound, a lot of pain or something like that. The Charlie, Delta, and Echo level are advanced life support calls. The Echo is a cardiac arrest call. Delta is usually, that's pretty significantly difficulty breathing, severe difficulty breathing. That would be a typical one. A lot of our traffic accidents become Delta response where we need paramedics on those. And so based on the call taker and the call information, they can come. And of course, if they get there and it turns out they need a paramedic, then they call a paramedic. Sometimes we get called on a Charlie or Delta level call, and actually by the time the advanced EMTs get there, they go, well, this really doesn't need a paramedic, and they cancel the paramedic unit that's been dispatched on that. So when I say that half the calls require a paramedic, well, more calls than half are dispatched as an advanced life support call, but by the time we go and assess the patient, they really don't require a paramedic. Maybe it's a diabetic that comes in as an ultra level conscious diabetic, and by the time we treat them, and we give them some D50W like dextrose, and we wake them up, and they're pretty well fine. Then we would need a paramedic to transport them. So that goes that. Thank you, Don. That leads right into our next slide with the tiered response. We currently have paramedic engines at Station 1 and Station 51 and Station 52. We have ambulances at we have ambulance 51, 52, 53, and then ambulance 533. So we actually run 2 ambulances out of Station 53 right now. The plan is, of course, when Station 4 opens up, that's ambulance 533 will move to Station 4. So we do staff, sometimes we cross staff with our engine if we need, which happens sometimes. We actually need a 5th ambulance. That crew, there are times we have 5 calls going on in the city where that engine company will actually jump staff from the engine to the ambulance. So unfortunately, that takes the engine out of service for that area too. So that's part of that problem with that ambulance that way. And we do have, as you see, we do have a pretty significant amount of what we call overlapping incidents, where we have an incident and another call comes in at the same time. Almost 54% of the time, we have another call come in. And multiple unit responses, again, about 60%. So that's where you see that's the actual amount of multiple times we have multiple units responding on calls. And our EMS calls have increased since 2005. We've had about 170% increase in call volume. We projected we'd have a super high increase with COVID at first, and then they told everybody, don't overwhelm EMS, don't call. So actually our call volume stayed about the same in 2020 as it did in 2019. But now we're starting to see it pick up, because typically we have a year after year increase of around 4.5%, 5%, 6% sometimes year after year. So that compounds. Now we'll probably surpass 7,000 incidents this year in the city. And so what's also proposed with this is, because of this increasing call volume, increased demand for paramedics, is that we propose placing Medic Engine 53 in service as a paramedic engine. We have sufficient amount of paramedics now as we hire more with our additional staffing with Station 4. We anticipate we'll pick up some more paramedics. We just recently hired some personnel that we brought on with the openings that we had, and lately I think it's been, two out of the 3 we just hired are already paramedics. So we had one lateral from another department, and we've had a few come over what we call lateral transfers from other departments because they want to come work here. It's kind of we like to think of ourselves as a destination department. And we've also hired one that had experience as a paramedic. We've hired one that had paramedic experience at, say, Gold Cross, and they got trained as firefighters, and we've brought them on. So we would propose that. I put that proposed would be around the July 2022 timeframe. Of course, that just correlates with the next start of the next fiscal year. So somewhere along that lines, we would propose putting that 3rd paramedic unit in service. So as far as what Alex mentioned on the standard of care, there is that state administrative code that does require 2 paramedics to the scene of 911 calls requiring advanced life support. So that's why we have to have 2 paramedics on a unit. So we would obviously continue that. And then there's another standard we like to follow. It's the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710. That's an accepted standard for response, and that relates to response time. And there's also fire responses included, but the paramedic side of that, or advanced life support, the recommendations and best practices is to have ALS on scene within 9 minutes from dispatch 90% of the time. That includes about just under 1 minute, what we call turnout time or reflex time, when the tones go off, that they're out and rolling down the road in less than a minute, and then be able to have a travel time with an advanced life support unit within 8 minutes. So we feel we can definitely meet that if we get the third paramedic unit in position. So kind of the why of this, of course, Davis County, the growth for paramedic services as well as law enforcement services will also grow along with all the growth just within Davis County. So part of the issues we talk about is an increase in response time. And then when it talks about one paramedic response, that really talks about the way that Davis County currently deploys theirs. They have a single deputy that's in a vehicle that responds with another deputy. So we have 2 paramedics on all of our paramedic units. So that's just kind of a background as to why these other entities are coming on board, so that they can have 2 paramedic staff in responding. And of course, billing and supply issues and things like that. That there's been issues in the past with getting the reimbursements across between entities and things like that. So we have an agreement in place that covers that, because we do respond occasionally. We'll get called to the sheriff's department might be tied up, and we'll take a paramedic call into Syracuse, or we'll take a call down into typically Syracuse in Kaysville, or up into North Davis Fire District's area, which is Clearfield and Sunset. Typically, they also have West Point. We'll sometimes have those be called out on mutual aid occasionally to back them up. Not frequently, but it does happen occasionally. And so the discussion again with all the chiefs in the county was a lot of concerns with service delivery, response times, and things like that. And again, this is mostly just to give you the global view of the overall picture of why Davis County is making this transition. I mentioned we've had to back up, and with other entities being able to pick up the paramedic service, that will increase the amount of units within the county overall. So back in about spring of 2019, the discussions began about how is this going to work. We talked with Sheriff Sparks about the transition over, and then in fall of 2019, city managers, county officials, fire chief, sheriff's office, and dispatch were all brought on board to talk about this and figure out this transition. And so there were some subcommittees that were created that Alex and I had both served on, with coverage and service delivery, revenue, expenses, and the expense of startup of units and things like that. And then back in spring of 2020, the subcommittee started to report back, and so there was a transition timeline discussed in the interlocal agreement, which is what we're bringing to you tonight. Paramedic education. Some of these agencies are going to have to send people to paramedic school, and already are starting to send people to paramedic school in the neighboring cities. Certainly, they'll be looking to hire existing paramedics from other agencies, we would imagine. And then also the financial aspects of the county tax. So when the county mill levy was put in place back in whatever year it was initially, I don't know exactly, but it was like late 70s or early 80s. The county collected the tax, and it had a little bit of a growth escalator in there. And so initially we were getting like $500,000 a year, and that's grown. I think last time, Tracy, what's our last payment? Almost 790, I think something close to that. Yeah, so 787,000. So it's grown over time. Well, with them getting out of the business, that county mill levy is basically going to go away. So that's part of the proposal, is these cities will pick that up through property tax within the cities. And so we're proposing that we just basically move that money over. So what the citizen currently pays in Layton City to the county, that exact same amount will just be paid now directly to Layton City. So it will, of course, show a slight increase in property tax, but when we educate the public that it's really just a transition of the money over. It's not an increase in taxes per se for the city. It's to just offset the one that's going away. So citizens won't see any difference other than Layton City will pick it up rather than paying it to the county, and then the county paying us. So, as I mentioned, the expansion of this will basically, the paramedic service discussions that come into play in terms of the number of units in the county. The discussion was 11 paramedic units, and that was before South Weaver decided that they wanted to kind of go alone and do it on their own. So that basically provides 12 paramedic units within the county, compared to basically, as you see now, we have 9. So that increases several paramedic units within the county. And the other thing is they're strategically placed. As the deputy sheriffs work countywide, there'd be times when a call might come into West Point and the nearest deputy is in Farmington, and another one might be in, South Kaysville or something. And so there's quite a bit of a response time issue. That was one of the drivers for this whole thing to come about. So we kind of broke this into 4 different coverage areas that we talk about, not consolidation or things like that. The North Davis County area, Syracuse, West Point, Sunset, Clinton, Clearfield, and part of Hill Air Force Base would basically have 3 paramedic units, 1 in Clinton, 1 in Syracuse, and 1 in Clearfield. That station 42 is a Clearfield fire station there. That would be through North Davis. In Layton City, of course, we cover our city. We would pick up the coverage that the Davis County Sheriffs currently provide to Hill Air Force Base. We have a pretty good chunk of the base that we respond to. Paramedic call-wise, it's usually maybe 16, 18 calls a month, so it's not significant. They are actually starting up their own ambulance service on May 1st, which we have been providing ambulance service to them for years, decades. We've been providing ambulance service to the base, and so we will provide paramedic service for them for a portion of the base. And then we would have our paramedic units at Station 51, 52, and 53. The central Davis area of Kaysville, which is also Kaysville Fire Department, covers Fruit Heights. They'll have a paramedic unit out of Station 61, which is the Kaysville Fire Station. Again, a lot of these are single station departments. So, and Farmington, Station 71, which is out of the single Farmington station. And then South Davis Metro covers the 5 cities to the south with their 3 paramedic units. So some of the things that we're looking forward to is get to where we can have a borderless response regardless of geopolitical boundaries. We'll continue our mutual aid agreements. The goal kind of long term is to have all those vehicles equipped with automatic vehicle locators, an AVL, which we have on all of our apparatus now. So our dispatchers send the closest unit that's available when the call comes in. So we already do that. Not a lot of places around here do that, even in other counties. They're starting to in some Salt Lake County and a few other counties do that. Have gotten pretty aggressive on their use of automatic aid and automatic vehicle locators. So that gets the closest ALS unit to the scene, because really that's what it's about. It's taking care of the citizen. So, and with that countywide paramedic training, we really have that continuity. We make sure everybody's, rising tide raises all ships. Well, that's kind of how we feel with our program. We're looking forward to kind of raising the level of the service and the paramedic delivery within the county. So we would back each other up. Like I said, with our 3 units, I don't foresee a whole lot of time we would be going out of the city. And part of the agreement that we've worked out with on this, that Alec's been involved in, is the cities are typically will use their resources first, just to keep the use of their resources within their city. And then we would back them up, and until comes a time maybe when we kind of drop that boundary a little bit more, and we cross over and cover areas that we might be closer to, and Kaysville might pick up a call that their unit might be a little bit closer to as well. So again, back to the staffing. The part of our plan with this agreement is that the paramedic unit response units must be staffed with 2 licensed paramedics. And any additional paramedic units that are added must be non-transport, either mobile rescues or paramedic engines, like we do. And these are all just the codes that these are cited under in terms of the State Bureau of EMS rules, as well as their operational rules, as well as the state code in terms of the staffing levels. And then kind of an oversight committee of this, we have the Davis EMS Council, of which all the fire chiefs are one of the voting members on that council. And so we meet fairly regularly and discuss EMS issues within the county. So that'll provide some additional oversight. So with the transition timeline, there's a couple of slides on that. The discussion with the city councils, we have begun. That's why we're here to adopt the interlocal agreement with the counties and other cities. If you look at the timeline on that is where we're at right now, where the interlocal agreement is being adopted. How many cities you said?
I've been told there's 7 that have adopted.
Seven cities have taken it to their councils already for adoption. So, and a big part of this, as you can see, is that public information effort, especially related to the transfer of the property tax over from the counties to the cities. So that's good. You can see that's a fairly lengthy timeline because we figure that'll take some lengthy discussions for everybody so that everybody's on board and understands exactly what that means. And then formation of merging of cities and service districts is where needed. That was one thing that was discussed at one time, was some of these areas may want to look at forming some kind of a paramedic service district or combining their departments into a fire district. I don't foresee that happening with anything other than it's already been done. We don't foresee that changing. The biggest part of this, though, too, is the county eliminating the county property tax levy. So that'll be coming up here shortly. And then the cities will have to adjust their tax rates to take on those additional costs. Obviously, for us, it's just a transfer over for our citizens. The money that they're already paying to the county will transfer over to the city. Some of the other cities will have to look at larger property tax increases. Do you want to speak to that? Okay. And so the different departments that are going to start providing service are going to apply for and receive their licenses for paramedic service. And then, of course, part of that hiring and training new personnel, and some of those departments have already started to do that. As I mentioned, they've already started to bring on new personnel in their cities and have hired some paramedics in anticipation of that. And then the department's getting the necessary equipment and vehicles to where the cities begin providing paramedic service in the middle part of 2022. And the sheriff's department has a plan to eliminate their service at the end of January 2023, the end of 2022. Yes?
So just a couple. So on 6, the A and B, the A is this initial, transfer of the mill levy from county to city. Do we anticipate that we'll be in a 6B setting where we're going to be asking for even more money a year from now for the program?
No, for Layton?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No.
And then on 7, to continue to pay for, the city's continuing to pay for paramedic service. So if they stop collecting the mill levy in June or July, whenever it is on here, we'll just be billed for whatever services, or the cities will be billed for whatever services they use for the county? Is that in the interim?
So for Layton, our situation doesn't change out from what it was.
Okay.
So if we pick up the levy that the county drops off, we'll actually collect a little less money under the levy than we're getting by contract from the county.
Okay.
So for the next year and a half, whatever we collect, we'll give to the county, and they'll give us back, like we've historically done, the larger amounts. So we'll give them, it's roughly $650-ish,
Okay.
and they'll give us $787 back. So it doesn't change for us. One thing significantly in this, we haven't updated because it just happened yesterday, is that for the contract cities that have been given service by the sheriff's office in the past, they've been actually paying something for that service. It's been a subsidized rate. They've been paying the rate to the sheriff's office to provide the service. And so one of the challenges for some of those cities, again, not us, but for some of them, has been if we take on the county rate that's going to drop off, with that money we're starting to collect, we have to not only continue to pay the sheriff's office for service, plus we have to have paramedics and stand up our own system, buy equipment and supplies. And so there was a little bit of concern about that. So as I think I mentioned before, there were some of us, we had an opportunity in this manager group to approach the county commission and to ask them to consider doing something on the county end to fund the continuation of the sheriff's services for the next year and a half, so that the cities could focus their revenues on standing up the system. It doesn't apply to us, but these other cities. And yesterday, I received a text from one of the commissioners yesterday indicating that in open meeting yesterday, they voted to support that. And so that's for some of the smaller cities, they're going to have to look at a little more aggressive funding than we have to because of the history. That was really good news for them. So
Yes.
With all the districts, and I know we're talking about combining the dispatch, how does that work?
We're talking about consolidating, in the short run, the technology that manages the dispatch, not the dispatch centers themselves, but going to a common server.
So everybody will still have their dispatch.
So there's 4 dispatch centers in the county currently: Layton, Clearfield, Sheriff's Office, and Bountiful
No.
City. But we all have our own separate databases that
Yeah.
have, right, they have Alex Jensen in Layton's, and they have Alex Jensen in Bountiful's, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're doing is bringing all those, and we can't see each other's data. We're talking about bringing all that into one common server. So Layton dispatcher can pull up and see Alex Jensen's history in any of the cities in Davis County. Right, so you have real-time data on who you are and what you've done or haven't done, or what have you. We're going to common procedures, common protocols, common call signs. So again, it's all part of this effort to bring uniformity and consistency.
So the first part is to bring that together before, and then eventually that may change number one.
Yeah, eventually the goal is to consolidate some brick and mortar. What we've proposed, and what our view has been, at Layton at least, is we ought to eventually work down to two brick and mortar centers, one in the north and one in the south. Layton will be the one in the north. Clearfield is already acknowledged they don't need to be in the dispatch business. The south end's where there'll have to be some working out to decide. But down the road, within a few years, again, you'll see a much more cohesive, streamlined, efficient delivery of service, both operationally and communications wise.
I don't know, so I'm asking, but how do they know where 911 calls from? I mean, if I call 911, is it where I'm at? Does that determine? I mean, I don't know. If my phone's from whatever, not from Utah, and I call mine, I mean, you know, I know that sounds stupid, but
Yeah.
so they can tell where the call
Yeah.
originates, and that's why it goes either south or north.
Yeah, that's been quite a bit of an enhancement, and Chief Vaughn can speak to that too, but the dispatch centers have upgraded to different phase 2, I guess is the latest one in terms of they're able to
When you're
identify.
if you ring a 911 from your cell phone right now,
Right.
it would probably hit this tower right here and hopefully ring right downstairs
Oh,
over there. But there are, because of how the cell phone towers work and where they're at, there are times where an obvious Layton City resident is hitting a cell phone tower in Kaysville, which is then going to Davis County. And so now this CAD system that we're putting together, the county dispatch, instead of transferring that call to our dispatch, is now just kicking it out with us going, sending the data across the CAD, and then our dispatchers are taking us out. When we get the single CAD, they'll be able to see what units in Layton are available, because they can't see that right now, and they'll just dispatch us for them and get us moving. So
Okay.
that's how your cell phone gets 911. Your home is tied to Layton City, but your cell phone could be tied from anywhere. If Tom's out in his
Depending on where
field,
you're at.
if Tom's out in his field and he calls 911, it's probably going to go to the Davis County.
So what was the timeline on that consolidation?
On
Not the dispatch center consolidating, but the system.
we're actually working on, we had a meeting earlier this week, and we're spearheading that. Carl Keene and Chief Swanson are spearheading that. They got ordered yesterday to be volunteers, which we're happy to do, to be the host center of this, so that the technology will be housed here in Layton. We'll be the primary managers of it, great IT support and great dispatch support. But the idea is that Bountiful's coming on. Bountiful has been under a different CAD system. They're coming on to the same, so we'll have consistent CAD system across the whole network. The short answer is within 10 to 11 months, that whole thing will, it could be as short as 8 months, because Bountiful's coming on, they need to, they're moving, completely transitioning, not just adding. There's an extra couple of months, 2-3 months that will be added. We just had yesterday that we felt that made sense to bring everybody on together and work through. So within the next year, before this transition takes place, that communication piece will be up, so these resources can be efficiently delivered.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a question about, it talks about in the contract, the unincorporated areas in the county.
Uh-huh.
And there'll be a separate agreement. It sounds like the county will still collect tax in that area and then bill or send them.
They'll send to us, right. So any.
So is that part of the consolidation or the merging of the cities and the districts? Will the unincorporated parts of Fayette County be part of that?
Yes, under the licensure requirements, every square inch, basically, of the county is under somebody's license. So as the cities take this service on, they'll have to, if there's a county piece that's in their jurisdiction of where they're going to serve, and we have a few of those, for example, the cities will have to absorb those. The county is going to continue to collect tax from those county residents, then they're going to turn around and pay the city that's providing that service to their residents in there. So that'll be by a separate agreement. But through this, the county's acknowledging we're going to do that, and the cities are acknowledging that we're going to pick up those county areas. Otherwise, the state wouldn't let us, they won't allow that license to transfer from the county to the city unless they know that every square inch is covered.
And that's why in the agreement it said that the city's not, by its own legislative authority, can get rid of the tax utility, because the state still needed to cover unincorporated areas because they aren't under the jurisdiction of any certain city.
Yeah.
And-
Exactly.
And then just a general question for you, Gary. I mean, what are the remedies if for us, if they aren't standing up their systems? I mean, there really isn't any in there, so I don't really know how a governmental agreement between municipalities and counties, how do you enforce that against each other other than just saying, can you please just do what you said?
Yeah, it's more of a letter of understanding
Yeah.
essentially as to how this will all be put together. Any deficiencies in their system, I believe, probably would be addressed up at the state level. If you've got a license to service an area and you're inadequately servicing it, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but it seems to me that would be your recourse and not the other cities all coming down on you, but would you go up there and they'd make you do it. Otherwise, they pull your license and they'd have to get service from somebody else.
Yeah, it seemed just more like a rumor. I'm just used to reading contracts and say this is what we do when someone doesn't do what they say. But in this case, when they're all municipalities, it's really just a memorandum of this is what we are all doing together.
That's really what it is. It's a set of guidelines rather than an actual.
Any other questions? Before we move on?
And give you a plan of that. The reason that has to be that way is because each entity is independently governed. You have city council like you are, and you're not going to agree to an agreement where Clerkville City can tell the city council what to do. So that's the reason you don't have, with private business, you can sit in there, but for more
I was
experience.
just had a question about South Beaver.
Like utopian things, one of the things we thought was important is, we can't bind other city council, we can't even bind, you can't bind future city councils, we can't. But the more we can articulate what the vision is, that there's some peer pressure to say, look, you can't reinterpret the origination of this 10 years down the road and say, well, we really didn't mean that. We have a document that everybody signed on to that says, yes, we did mean it, and this is what we're committing to do. And the feeling, this is just my opinion, but having been involved, and I think it's pretty accurate, is that long before an issue, if there were an entity that began to drop off in terms of its commitment, long before they ever got to the state, they would face the balance of the cities, right? Because it's been very clear that we're all in this together. The idea is that everybody will rise. There's no more have and have nots. There's an expectation, and that's what they've run into over that. So there may be some tests of that over time. You dealt with that on Utopia years and years ago, but we felt like that was the best possible approach.
Well, let's move on to our budget discussion, because I know we keep shortchanging that, and the intent in this meeting was to eliminate everything and give Tracy enough time, so Tracy,
Well, hopefully we'll just take a few minutes to finalize some of the areas of the budget that we haven't talked about. First, I wanted to update you on where we're at on sales tax in the current year. If you look at where we were 2020 to date, 9.7, this year we're at 11.1, so we're up 13.7% on sales tax, so that's a very good picture. If you look at how we compare that to what I had estimated to budget each month, we're up about at 1.8 million, almost 20%. So sales tax continues to come in very strong. This is just through January sales that we received in March. So all in all, a good picture so far this year. If we move into the 2022 budget, general fund, just to give you an update on that from our all-day meeting. Some of the things that have changed, we've refined the 3% compensation number a little bit, 586,000. The salary survey adjustment, which we didn't quite have ready back at that meeting, for the general fund will be right around 90,000. And then we have 9 months of 6 firefighters, 3 months of 6 firefighters, and then the other requested positions. So that would add about 1.2 million to personnel to take us to, well, not quite that much, but 129 million. We have 6.3 million in operational costs, 815,000. This number hasn't changed. In capital equipment, 3 million for capital projects that will transfer to the capital projects fund. That number changed a little bit. What was the project that we added money to? That the
Parks.
Parks projects. That's right. Sorry.
There's one there.
And then the rest of these numbers haven't changed. So that brings us down to use of fund balance in the 2022 budget of 3.7 million. And so if we look at where we were at the end of June 2020, 10.1 million. In the current year, 2021, we've budgeted to use 1.4 million of that. I'm pretty sure we won't use that much, but that's what we budgeted to use. That would take us down to 8.6 available. And if we use 3.7 of that, we'll be left with just under 5 million or 13.7% of revenue. So just in this past legislative session, for years, the maximum we could have is 25%. In this last legislative session, they bumped that up to 35%. We found, at least in the 9 years I've been here, and as long as Alex has been here, that if we can operate somewhere between 13 and 15%, that's managed to get us through the storms that we've been through over the last 2 decades, whenever we've had ups and downs. So that's kind of what, when the two of us look at it, we try to keep that number right around that level because that's been a good level for us historically. And yet, we're able to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished. Equipment needs to be replaced, personnel needs to be taken care of, and you can't short in all your operational expenses as well. There's computer contracts, salt, sand, all that kind of stuff that we have to have in order to do the job. So that's a general fund projection. Before I move into the others, are there any questions as far as that goes? Okay. So some of the funds that we have left to discuss, the pool fund, we could see that revenues are down through 2020. We expect them to be down through this year, but then 2022, we're hopeful that, starting July, the second half of the summer and then June of next year, our revenues will be back up to what they were. The one main thing that uses up some funds in this year is the replacement of the pool bubble heater. So that's a $130,000 project at the pool. We're proposing to transfer $570,000, which is a little more than we have the last 2 years, over to the pool from the general fund to subsidize that operation. We'll still use about $66,000 in net assets, but we will end up with about $45,000 in unrestricted net assets in that fund. So that's where we stand on the pool. There's the project, and then you guys all have access to these slides so you can look over them and look at the projects and things. In the emergency medical fund, the chief just spent a bunch of time talking about that. The main thing in there would be that, he talks about the revenues continue to go up and operational costs go up with that when the revenues go up. But we have $443,000 in capital, which is a little more than we've spent the last couple of years in that fund. That'll cause us to use some of the net assets, $94,000. The emergency medical fund will end up with about just under 1.8 million in net assets. So that's in a great position. The two major projects in emergency medical are half of the fire alerting system. So general fund or fire will cover the other half. And then power load gurney systems for 7 ambulances. $175,000. So those are the two major projects in there.
Just a quick comment on that station alerting system. That's another area where there's disparate systems being dispatched throughout the county, and the idea is everybody's going to go to the same system, so that, again, if we end up in a situation where we're dispatching units out of the south end, when we communicate with their stations, we're using the same system we're using in Layton. It's just part of that consolidation and efficiency of everybody is using the same protocols. And,
Okay. In the special revenue funds, now these are funds that have a specific revenue source, and so they have to be accounted for in their own fund. That doesn't necessarily mean that the program that's supported pays for itself 100%. We have the Victim Services Fund, and Mr. Crane just spent a few minutes earlier talking about that. I don't know if that was in this meeting or the one we were in right before. Yeah, that was exactly. Sorry, but they've been, the federal government's cut some funding in that program, and he got some good news that maybe there's a way where that funding will be coming back. But the general fund does subsidize this program at the level of $59,000 a year transfer from the general fund, and it runs at about even, which is what it should do. And I think we've had other meetings to explain what that fund does. But alcohol enforcement fund is alcohol enforcement monies that we receive from the state. We have one dedicated officer to that, and the general fund supplements that program by about $20,000 so that we can balance it out each year. The 911 dispatch fund, 911 collects from two different sources off of the phone bills, and those revenues need to come into a special fund so we can account for them. Out of the costs for that fund, we cover some operational costs, and then we cover about 28% of the police communications budget with these revenues as well. So you can see that the 911 fund, is only the costs of operating the actual dispatch center are mostly covered by police communications in the general fund, and some of that being covered by the dedicated revenue source that goes for 911. And that fund ends up at even balance at the end of the year. Metro Strike Force Fund, that's mostly grant supported with some assessments to cities who don't provide officers. There's 11 officers, and those officers come from, I think 3 or 4 from us, and some from the county and the various cities. The cities that don't provide an officer, they get an assessment. And then we spend those monies mostly on overtime, and then doing the things that the strike force does. Mostly drug deals, I guess, but.
You're good at it.
And they're very good at it. And they do occasionally use some of the fund balance, and a lot of the times when they use fund balance, it's just that they're pulling grant money from prior years that didn't get spent, and so that's the way that operation works. Community Development Block Grant, Chad and his group bring forward the annual action plan to you. 2021 revenue was significantly higher just because of the COVID-19 grants that fell in there. But back down to more historical funding levels, actually I think those are a little bit lower than they have been. And then there's various programs that are approved through the annual action plan that go into the budget related to Community Development Block Grant. Low to moderate income type opportunities. The RDA, the revenue in the RDA will reduce significantly in 2021-2022 because of the expiration of the project area. And fortunately, the school district was good and renewed an extension on that at 50% and instead of 100%. And so that's the reason for the drop in the revenue there. And we cover about half of one of Community Development's employees, the deputy director, in the RDA and the EDA as far as personnel goes. And then there's some payback agreements and affordable housing that has to happen inside the RDA. The balance is there. The unassigned balance in the RDA is fairly significant, and also a reservation for UTA parking structure and a commitment to affordable housing that has to take place within there. The EDA, the revenue there continues to grow with the development, and there are some payback agreements within that development, mostly to Keomac and West Test, and the unassigned fund balance in that fund sits in a very good position as well to be able to accommodate future development. The impact fee fund, I've been fairly conservative each year on my estimates of what those fees will be, just because we generally don't spend them until well after we've received them, and so we focus more on what we have in our balances than we do what's going to come in the current year. You can see that in the current year, we're going to use $5.3 million of transportation impact fees, $723,000 of park impact fees towards projects, and another $414 towards debt service to pay on the park bonds. And there's, in the current year, or in the 2022 budget, no anticipated use of public safety impact fees. The balances of those impact fees at the end of 2022 is anticipated to be $3.4 million in transportation, $940,000 for parks, and $1.3 million in public safety. Class C road funds, we receive about $2.6 million every year from the fuel tax, and for the 2022 budget and last year, and most of just about every year before that, that funding goes towards maintenance. And because of the shift in the funding, we do have a bit of a reserve in there, which we didn't have maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but we whittle away at that trying to do maintenance projects such as these that are listed. And you have a list of reconstruction and overlay projects, crack seal projects, slurry seal, and mastic seal. And Steve's here and could explain all that a lot better than me, but that is the list of where those projects go for maintenance. Prop 1 funds, which is 0.1% that the city receives on sales tax on non-food items, about $1.2 million in revenue, divided between streets and parks projects. The streets projects are listed on this schedule that are proposed for use of those funds, and the parks projects down here totaling $1.26 million. The ramp funds, Trace Chatelain came by a couple of meetings ago and went through the ramp fund projects with you that total $1.8 million. That'll use $314,000 of fund balance, but we will still have $1.5 million in fund balance in the ramp fund, so we're keeping with our philosophy of staying ahead, collecting the ramp funds before we actually commit to spending them.
Why the decrease in administrative costs?
Oh, I don't think we found that we were actually spending that money, so we just brought it more to a level of what's actually being spent. Here's the list of the projects. Like I mentioned, Trace Chatelain, the committee chair, went over those. And so most of this money ends up transferring over to city projects, with the exception there is a list of much smaller projects, but again, we went over those. The Capital Projects Fund, we went through the long list of projects that are out there. We have transfers from mostly the general fund and the impact fee funds and ramp fund, Prop 1 fund that all go into these various projects. 6.6 million of those in streets, the largest of which is the 2700 West and Layton Parkway projects, and then 4.9 million in parks and recreation projects.
And again, Tracy, why the big decrease from the developer payments and other sources?
So developer payments it just depends on the project. So this Harmony Place Park that was out there was a large developer payment that year. And in the projects that are proposed in 22, there's only one small one where a developer is going to contribute to one of those projects. So that just varies from year to year. The debt service fund, the main items there are the park bond payments, principal and interest, and then our Utopia debt service reserve. You will notice that the amount that the city contributes is constant at this point, and the amount that we receive from UIA to help supplement that payment and make up the difference has been increasing. I think this number is probably a budgeted number, not what we actually received. So. And that's it. So that pretty much covers all of the budget stuff that we need to cover. So
Well, that was faster than what I anticipated. I was wanting to make sure you had ample time to really dive into it and answer any questions, or let these guys have any questions they might have. You guys have any detailed questions, or want to go over any of those items specifically? You know, I know before we had questions regarding some of the road projects, and I don't know if you want to kind of.
Yeah, we have a presentation of all those
Okay.
as well. Came up at the budget meeting,
So just as far as the timeline, I mean, we still have time to adjust the budget however you would like. At our next meeting, May 6th, we'll adopt the tentative budget. We still can review it after that and make adjustments. We'll set a public hearing for the first meeting in June. And then the second meeting in June, we'll adopt what we call a final budget, but we won't adopt our final property tax rate pending, moving forward with this paramedic service and adopting that county levy into ours. It will require us to go through the truth and taxation with that, and then we'll end up adopting our final property tax rate second meeting in August. So.
And right now, the projection's about 13.7. Is that what I remember?
For your, back your slush fund?
Yeah. Thank you for saying the
I know.
The fund
Sorry,
balance
that
in the
was-
general fund
That's your
is
fund
about
balance.
13.7, 14% of general fund revenue.
general funds, yeah.
So that doesn't speak to, because it's a separate funding issue here, it's
No.
COVID cares money and that we have and we have common, well, that's separate from that. So there's additional resources that are available. So more clarification, obviously, without details around those. But this is in good financial condition.
Just for fun, and I don't know how's the fire station done?
It's out for bid right now. We had to readjust something on the bid process with the state E3P site, and that closes on May 4th at 3 p.m. And then we'll do a review of the bids with our engineers and our department staff, and then we look to be bringing to you a proposed general contractor award probably the first Thursday at the first council meeting in June.
But it's moving the way that you wanted it to move.
It's always too slow, but it's moving ahead.
Well, yeah, that's not fair, but yeah.
We just don't feel like we'll be adequately, we'd like to think we could do it at the second council meeting in May, but we're planning the first council meeting in June for the bid award recommendation.
Thanks.
I got a question, if that's okay. Layton City is one of the major sponsors of the State Arts Council each year. I'm a big fan, by the way. But my question is, we pay that sponsorship fee each year, and I'm assuming it's out of the general fund.
Yeah.
And we've got a fund balance from RAMP that's $1.5 million. And then just back to the competition for general fund, I'm just wondering why that's not a project that's asked for each year from the RAMP Commission, the sponsorship for the Davis Arts Council. I guess that's a question for all of us, but just to look at the budget and monies.
Well, I think, I was gonna say, the ramp is really geared towards, an annual, so every year you have to apply. Whereas the way it is now, we've actually, because that has to operate year in and year out, you've got a designated amount that's already in the budget, correct? That's
Well,
set towards that, but
we
if
anticipate-
they, yeah, but if they go to the ramp process, then that could, depending on what project comes them up, that could put them in a peculiar situation down the road.
They do approach us, every year when the ramp, the Arts Council submits invoice
Right.
to us every year. You know,
This is a donation.
Yeah, that's just a donation. We've never not turned it, not done it like you're saying.
Right.
But,
I'm sorry.
quite,
One of the things to remember is that when the RAMP application process was set up, there was criteria set up in that process. And one of those criteria is that the application should not be geared towards covering general operating expenses.
Right.
And so we asked for project or equipment specific ramp applications, and the money that the city contributes to the Davis Arts Council goes to general operating funds for their organization.
What, when I wasn't around for this back in the Great Recession, but were there similar, I mean, I know there wasn't the level of COVID cares type of funding to municipalities back in 2018, 19, or 2008, 09. But we've been able to, with this fund balance being high, 13% to 13%. I do have some I guess I have some hesitancy in keeping so much of the taxpayer money in a little account that's already been collected that we're waiting to pay for future projects. I think it's smart to have a balance. I guess my question is, seeing that 13% or where that's what we've been doing for a long time has seen us through two major hits to the economy, if that 13% is higher than it needs to be. And is there an argument to be made to getting more of the taxpayer money out back into the community instead of sitting in a reserve fund? And obviously I defer to the professionals on that, because you guys are the ones that come up with the numbers and why 13 to 15% is where you want to be. And the legislature obviously already said that they have given states, the municipalities, the ability to go all the way up to 35. I don't understand that at all. I have no only reason why that would be good management of a city. But maybe just I guess it's just my thoughts on it in a general sense. If there's a reason why you like that 13, 15, just because it's what you've been doing, or if you think that with the COVID money coming in, having all this extra money, if we could run a little bit tighter in the reserve balance to maybe do some more things in the community. So that's just a question to me. Just
one thing that I've noticed, if you run much leaner than that, then if you do have a recession and you have a problem there, and there's a number of cities that this happened to in 08, 09, layoffs, right? So then you provide no stability for your employment base, and they're jumping ship, right? They're going to the guy who's going to provide stability, because that's the kind of employees you get at a municipality, is people who want stability, right? If we all wanted to work in the private sector, we'd be out there getting laid off every 5 years, right? Because the contract didn't get renewed or whatever. But that's part of it, right? And also, you have very large equipment things that come along. You know, all of a sudden you need a fire engine, and that thing's $750,000. That takes a big chunk, a big hit into what you have available. So that's most of the theory, is that we shouldn't be, I've watched a number of cities over my career who tried to run, and they actually didn't do it intentionally. It was because they didn't dare raise taxes anymore, and they got themselves in a bad situation where every year they had to come up to the 5%, because that's the bottom.
Yeah.
Because you have to have 5%. Well, the only way they did that is lay a bunch of people off, cut programs, cut equipment. Well, you start doing that, and pretty soon you just snowball the disaster, right? If all of our equipment is 10, 15, 20 years old, well, now we have to lease equipment because we can't afford to buy equipment. Anyway, you get the idea, right? If you keep a nice, healthy reserve, you can manage through the storms without changing the makeup of everything in your city. Now, in 08, 09, though, Alex will say to you that we did cut a lot of equipment costs. We cut increases to personnel down to, were there a couple of years when there was 0, or was it always maybe like a 0.5% or 1%?
Something that was.
I mean, it's not like the city isn't willing to cut down, but we didn't lay anybody off.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm taking what the fund balance was that it seems like that the city just, I feel bad, honestly, when I look at other cities. We've done a good job, but we've been able to shoulder it really well. And with this COVID money coming in, maybe that's what I mean by this should be dovetailed into discussions about a COVID cares money, because from my understanding, this is just the initial assessment is that money has to be spent, that we're not allowed to just keep it. And so I guess my idea was, if we're getting this increase of money that could pay for all those big capital equipments, and that has to be spent right now, whereas our fund balance doesn't necessarily have to be, maybe that means that buys us some time to be able to do some extra stuff with the reserve fund that we wouldn't otherwise been able to do, because now we have the COVID money that we have to spend within a certain time. So that's just an initial, just kind of an initial idea. And it probably goes more to what we were talking about with the COVID money and what we were gonna do with it, because it's like once in a generation money here, seems like. And we should be like nimble on our feet and see what kind of real long-term consequences we can make for the city with this money that's just been given to us when we really didn't need it. I mean, the city doesn't really need it. We didn't have to let anyone go. We kept services the way they should be. So we get this money from the federal government, and now we have a chance to really kind of do something special with this money. And maybe that means we tweak a little bit of what we do on a year just because of this kind of exceptional piece of legislation that came down. So
Yeah,
printing money.
we agree with that. I think our staff's view at least is that we need to hold that money until such time as there's a clear articulation of how it can be used. We don't make judgments.
Yeah.
Where we have revenue streams for utility systems, for example. Should we take this COVID money and go build roads that we already have a revenue stream, or build water systems that we already have a revenue stream for? Or do we let that get clarified enough that we can know we can use it for other things? And then it gives the council great flexibility to do those generational type things. We agree with that 100%. Maybe just from my perspective, and just what Tracy said, is that we don't, you may not believe it, but I say that jokingly, that when you look at the numbers that come through, but we actually try to be responsible and mindful and think through about what we need versus what we want. And those can be two very different things. And some things that you want, I don't recommend we fund them this year. It's just let's put it in a plan and let's fund them 3 years out to avoid debt and a whole host of other things. But really that 13 to 15%, there have been times when we built Gentile years ago, for those of you that are around then, that we dropped that because it was a big project and it didn't make any sense to have that road under construction for 5 years, doing a piece and another piece. And so we took those reserves down to probably 4.5% that 1 year because we wanted to do that all at one time. But I guess the point I'm trying to make, not very well, is that we try to only ask for what we think that we need to have and the timing of that, but we also want to, which is ultimately your decision, but we want to provide for you flexibility at council. If there's something that happens, we have an opportunity to build a road, or the state decides to move up a project, we've got $5 million, $6 million on a section of West Oakville Road. If those opportunities come available, or the state says on an 89 project, hey, we're willing to connect Gordon and move it up to the priority that Layton needs to meet us, we need about $4 or $5 million. I feel like we would be doing our job if we had ran that down so far that when you come and say, hey, we want to do this, we say we don't have any money. So that's kind of part of that $4 to $5 to $6 million in there, is that if citizens come to you and there's an issue, they just build pickleball courts, right? We've done that. We had flexibility where you could be responsive and say, this is a priority and we want to do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say we should run like absolute like.
No, I know you weren't.
I just say
it's a great question.
Maybe just with the COVID, if you have something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if you had something in mind.
Yeah, but I don't know. I guess I just see us subsidizing some things that are just on an annual basis from the general fund, and I'm just kind of like, can we just find a fix for that? It needs to be long term. So I'm not really seeing specifics as much as just what can we do. This COVID money just seems to me like, I mean, the federal government can print money and just give it to us, and so we're just like, wow, well, thanks for the money. And we don't really need it in the city to run effectively as the budget shows, but we have a lot of opportunities with that money to be able to use it to really make a difference.
I was just curious, yeah, you had something on your mind.
Well, you've said it before, we have one-time money.
Yeah.
So we look at doing one-time things where we can, sometimes it's just a big ball of money, and it depends on what you write, what it's for. It's how, you're probably the most creative budget guy we know, because that's what you do all the time. And that's whether we're spending it out of COVID or whether we're spending it here, as long as we protect ourselves You know, that's, and I think we're all talking the same thing, but, you know, it's time, and you've talked about what we're looking at, to spend some of the COVID money.
Well, and I think that's where, you know, I've said that as soon as we get some clarity here, then yes, definitely, we need to sit down, we'll have a discussion on this.
Yeah.
You know, we'll require probably a separate meeting, which I know you guys are all in favor of, so as soon as we have a little bit more clarity on that. Initially, I was thinking we'd do it at the end of this month, but I don't know that we really have much more information right now.
We want to bring.
I was gonna say, if you guys want to have a pre-discussion prior to, and line us out, I mean, I'll tee up the idea of, you know, maybe on the 29th we get together for this month, because I mean, it's 5 week month. But if not, then maybe a little bit, what's that?
I know the Clint wanted to do something pre having this as a general kind of what I just did. But you want to have that kind of discussion beforehand, and I'd be okay with that too.
Okay, so based on that, what timing wise would work for you guys? I mean, everybody's schedule is a little bit different. I mean, stuff I was kind of thinking we probably have it during the day. I know, Tom, I know this is a bad time for you, but on the 29th of this month, and then,
We're gonna discuss specifically what yet?
I gotta go night. Night's better for you? I'm
Discuss
just,
specifically what-
COVID money and.
just a basically strategic planning and just kind of talk about maybe some ideas that everybody wants to throw out there on the utilities for money as well as anything else that we need to talk about. And
I mean, I'll try to make this schedule for whatever works better for everyone else.
We could add, we have that meeting, sorry, Mayor, that if we have that meeting, we could also give an update discussion with Q Street. Had some initial conversations there, and they're willing to, Scott's willing to be involved in any meeting. I told him we're going to be doing that. I'd like him to come, so that might be something we could add too. But
Anytime after private work. That was fine.
When we talk to the 20, that's Thursday, I see.
yeah, it's a Thursday night. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys think about it, just let me know before you leave tonight, kind of your best ballpark time, and then we can work with that. I just want to try to be as accommodating as possible. So.
We just glossed over this, but the double-digit growth on the sales tax, we should be doing cartwheels. And there's managing money, and then there's bringing the revenue in because of the diverse economy. And it's, that keeps going. And that's the, there's the property tax is a small amount, but we all know that the sales tax is the major portion. And the Layton economy is just performing very, very well.
Well, and I wonder how much has to
Yeah,
do
the big
with,
guy from in town.
yeah, with the
Yes.
CARES money that went to individual family, stimulus money and stuff, because I read a thing today that the one that just hit, record sales in clothing that has occurred, I mean, more than years worth of clothing. So I wonder if some of our increasing sales taxes, people had, especially in Layton, not a lot of people lost their job. And I know some families raked in a pretty good sum of money, and spent it. Yeah, car dealerships, home gyms, all kinds of stuff, so.
Horses.
Yeah, horses.
Tractors.
And there's always a couple of months.
Yeah, my yard.
Yeah.
But I think what Clint said is really true, and you don't get a lot of credit for that, but the foundation that was laid years ago.
Right.
And you guys face all the time pressures of housing mixes and no commercial or more commercial. What this has really proven is that balance in whatever formula, or percentages you look at, but if you have a balanced economy, you can weather those storms. If you have an unbalanced economy because of political pressure or not in my backyard or we don't want the impacts of traffic, whatever it is, they're good until you have this kind of thing happen, and then it really exposes your vulnerability. And I look at the cities across the state that have done the very best, and they all have a reasonable balance. And I think that can't be understated. But it's hard to recognize, right? If you haven't been involved with the city, you can recognize it intuitively, but you don't understand all the years of good decisions by councils that have helped to establish that. Anyway, you don't understand the point.
But I think one thing too, and this is where I've asked the question before about the online sales. I mean, cars, restaurants, those are things really we're probably not gonna go to Amazon for. But we do go to Amazon, it seems like, for almost everything else anymore. So, you know, I was at the mall the other day, and I cannot believe how many stores have closed there. And other stores that I've noticed that have started shuttering, you know, the brick and mortar loss, but obviously the Amazon's keeping us afloat, you know, the online sales types of things, and so.
Well, unfortunately, we have a number of large big box stores
Yeah,
that
that
people
make that
still
well.
go to.
Yeah.
Right? So unfortunately, you know, your smaller people are
Yeah.
getting pushed out.
Yeah, whether they're brick and mortar or they're online sales, either way you get it from them, but I think we're seeing a shift but staying on top of it, so.
We'll try to go through the two
Yeah, I was
projects.
gonna say, we've got about 10 minutes, let's kind of hit the road project, right?
We have water conservation, we can come back after, or what would you like us to do there? Let me proceed.
Yeah, so Alex asked me to hit on a couple of projects that you guys had questions on during your budget meetings. The first one was 1000 South and 2200 West. So West Davis corridor along the kind of southwest border of the city is going to come in, and the question is what do we do about 2200 West and 1000 South? So the proposal is to relocate the roadway adjacent to the West Davis corridor. UDOT has already purchased all of this property right here, along with many of the homes on this other south and west side of the corridor. So that's the proposal there. The road will still connect through. It'll become more of a frontage road in this area, but UDOT, or the contractor, Farmington Bay Constructors, is in design right now on this section, as well as relocating the utilities that are in the two roadways in this area. So.
Well, Steve, I've noticed they started bringing in dirt. Are they burning in preparation for something?
They're
Right in that
just-
general area?
Yeah, they're bringing in dirt throughout the corridor. They're building the backbone from the south to the north, and so they want to be able to bring in overburden. They've got a few really big fills that they need to do for the abutments, for the embankments, for the bridges and things like that.
Go back, will you?
Yeah, sorry.
You live a half a mile north of that road.
Oh, that's 22.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is 2200 West.
You know where you live?
Yeah, trying to. I'm going to throw my
Go
address.
take a drive, Dave. We could share.
My address in my hand.
You can go south.
All right, so Sugar Street is on the list as well. There's some reconstruction that needs to happen right at the entrance to the Smith's management buildings. And then this is slated for an overlay as well as a slurry seal. There's a sewer project that needs to take place right here before we do this work. But it needs to happen after August because there's so many power facilities in this area that if we hit one of them during the summer, it will be really bad for all of us. So we're delaying this till possibly September, but we will be keeping an eye on the area to make sure that this deteriorating in the road gets taken care of throughout the summer.
So question on that one.
Yeah.
Knowing that it's all heavy 18-wheeler type trucks, is, I'm sure you
Yeah,
put it
we've got
over
a
base,
different base and design that we're taking care of on that, to take care of that problem.
And are they looking at doing a dedicated turn lane into Smith's? I sat behind a truck that was
Yeah,
decided he was gonna make a wide left turn into Smith's. I
Yeah.
sat there for like 5 minutes
the
till he could
plan,
get out of
the
the way.
plan is to restrike the road so there is a center turn lane with one lane in each direction.
Yeah.
Good.
That's a big deal.
Hey, West Field Road, 3700 West, this is a project where the developer came in and traded the improvements for the value of the land, and the city has had this on an impact fee schedule for a couple of years now. In discussions with Alex, it was planned for the 22-23 budget. We've discussed this and planned to move this up into this in the upcoming budget with the impact fee funds that we have that Tracy spoke about. And so we anticipate being able to complete this fall. My team is currently finishing up designs and trying to get it ready to send out to bid. So, any questions on that one?
No, but that neighborhood you will appreciate.
Yeah, I think that'll help out quite a bit.
So one thing just to quickly mention on that, you will probably hear about it, is the homes on the other side of that corridor have all placed their fences in the right of way. So as we've identified that through the survey, So in terms of being able to get a sidewalk and approach it up through there, we're gonna a developer be approaching all those homeowners and let them know they've got to move their fences and so forth. So that wasn't a city issue, great issue, but it was part of the development that has come aware. So like I said, I'm sure you'll hear about that, but we'll just work through that carefully, but to get that consistent width through there.
Consistent with the landscape buffer in there, yeah.
They're all rear fences, it looks like, right?
Yeah, they're rear fences. There's a landscaping buffer on each side of the road to the south and to the north that needs to continue through this section as well.
South there, it's just those eight homes up through there that are, I don't know if nobody looked at the fence, they saw what Joe did first and they just replicated it all through there, but you can see it's exactly opposite, but just FYI.
How much width?
How much width? It's 5 feet landscape buffer that they basically set their fence on the property line instead of at the landscape buffer line. And so it needs to move back 5 feet, but a lot of the homes along here have put in ground trampolines in and some other things, and so there's gotta be some modifications that we need to take care of with the developer. The developer still is required to install all the landscape buffer and everything in this area too, so we're working on that.
So that's more his responsibility, you're saying?
Yeah, that's what we're asking, just go back and work through that with folks. Could be worse than that, 18 homes or 80 homes or something, but we'll just work through that. That's what we do.
All right, Dawson Street was the other one that's been discussed quite a bit. So if you recall from my street maintenance presentation a while ago, the remaining service life on this road is a 7. As we talked, we tried to do street maintenance based on the technical statistics and not necessarily aesthetics. And so this road does have some service life left, even though it has got a couple of rough patches that we've talked with Paul and Terry and our maintenance guys, and we plan to go out there and try and take some small repairs on it until we do get this onto a schedule sometime. So the road reconstruction is about $500,000. There's water line, storm drain. No, there's no storm drain. The water line is at an age where if we're going to reconstruct the road, it needs to be replaced. And so it would be a full reconstruct of this road, the subgrade and the road base because of the poor drainage, because there is no storm drainage piping. It just needs to be fully redone, and then the street lighting would add additional $30,000. So that's $800,000 total. Those costs don't include any property acquisition that needs to happen because we own some parts of the right of way and other parts we don't own because of the way that the old county records were. So currently it's not on the 5-year plan, it's on the unscheduled plan, but we're waiting for, I guess, either the water line to need to be replaced or the roadway to finally need to be fully replaced before we throw this on the list. And it's a balance. It's a balance between how many people are using the road and the drivability of it versus the funding needs that we have throughout the city. So, any questions on this one?
So you're saying that worst case, it would be on the 7-year plan? If you're anticipating 7 years, even though the life could go on for another 3 years, would you push it to 10 years then?
It just depends on where we're at with the roadway. I think the roadway is going to be the driving factor. The water line is in there and it needs to be redone, but I think that unless we start having some really bad problems with the water line, the road is going to be the first driver, and so probably 7 at the max would be where we'd be. But there may be other options. We haven't really approached the homeowners if they really want curb and gutter and sidewalk, but that's typically what we do to try and keep the road from falling apart prematurely as we build it to the current standards that keep the roads intact. So, but like I say, we do want to. There's some pretty inexpensive patching and other things we can do to try and fix a couple of the spots that seem to have an issue with settling and holding a little bit of water. We noticed today when we were out there looking at it with the rain that we're trying to address.
I think the biggest complaint I get is they feel like it's a roller coaster, but it is going up and down there, and of course the runoff water.
Yeah,
So
that's probably the biggest challenge too. Is the water has not got a lot of places to go. So King Street, we're currently in process. The project has started to the south here on the west side of the road, finishing the sidewalks. There will be contiguous sidewalk all along the west side of Keene Street with this summer project or spring project that we're completing. On the east side of the road, this project is in the 24-25 budget year. However, we have seen development interest on this parcel, and it's in conjunction with both of these parcels. So if that development occurs sooner than the 24-25 budget year, then we would move with them. We've spoken with Alex. We just worked that into a budget somehow to finish the portion that isn't going to be finished by the development, so that then there would be sidewalk through this section as well. Church Street, there's a proposed budget project in 24-25 as well. It's $405,000. It's for the west half of Church Street to complete the sidewalk. We're trying to get sidewalk on either the east or west side of roads or north or south sides, just so that there's at least contiguous sidewalk in half the street at least. So this would be to complete the sidewalk through the area on the west half of the road, and then there's a few areas where we would need to widen the road out the rest of the way to get that to happen. Along with that project, we would evaluate the whole pavement area there and try and work that into the street maintenance project that comes at that time frame. So, and then 1675 North is this street right here. This is the proposed 2022 street maintenance for this area, and all these blue lines would be overlays, and then there's reconstruction in some of these areas, and this is all based on that TAMS model that we have with the remaining service lives. So again, this one's been on our list for a couple of years now, but it's in the 2022 plan at this point in time, just based on funding and other things that need to be taken care of. So those are all the street projects, I think. I hope that was the list Alex gave me.
I think none of our reading.
Those were the last two or three that I mentioned from people's correspondence with me, so, yeah, thank you.
Right.
That was quick. Thank you.
Sorry, I
And
kept
you
you
can't sign
over
mine,
time.
so I guess we'll jump into our other meeting, and then, you guys, you said we want to come back to the last item. Or,
There's another one where the.
you guys want to come back? I would like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone out here for the Layton City Council meeting for April 15th. Our start time is 7:04. I appreciate your patience there. Our previous work meeting just ran a little bit behind, but for a good reason. So anyway, welcome. And I want to, basically, I need to call the meeting to order, and as you guys know, we have one of our council members take care of the opening ceremony portion. This is the month of April. Councilmember Morris has been conducting this month, so I'm going to turn the time over to him.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and then after I've asked our Fire Chief, Chief Kevin Ward, to offer the invocation. So if you please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, would you pray with me? Gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity we have to gather tonight as we discuss city business, and we're just so abundantly grateful for all that you provide here in this great country to live in and the freedoms that we have, Lord. We just know it's your divine providence for us and for us to be able to have this opportunity, Lord. We just pray that your presence will be here and guide and direct our discussion. We just thank you and praise you and give you the honor, praise, and the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Okay, council, I'll need a motion to be able to, regarding some minutes and see if there's any corrections or not. So go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I just have a clarification on an item that's in the minutes from January 13th, the work meeting. And this is either to Alex or Gary. I think it's to Gary because it quotes him. But so on page 7 of the minutes, we're talking about the Case Creek irrigation thing. And when you get to page 7, the bullet point below that says the city owned approximately 95% of the system, which was pressurized, only 5% wasn't pressurized. Does the city own 5% or 95% of Case Creek already? Okay, so how interpret that sentence for me, or does something in that need to be changed?
I don't have it in front of me, so I just kind of was trying to follow you, so.
We can pull that if you want for further review and clarification.
Okay, yeah, let's do that, and I'll take a look at it.
Okay, so I'll entertain a
I think it
motion.
was in that previous paragraph before that, too.
Okay.
So then I would advise that we adopt all the minutes except for A, and allow you to do your research and make sure we get it properly documented.
So with that, then, Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Layton City Council work meeting, January 21st, 2021, the minutes of the council work meeting of February 4th, 2021, and the minutes of the council meeting from April 2021 as written, and postpone voting on January 13th, 2021 planning. That was the strategic planning meeting minutes until clarification on that item.
Okay. Is there a second?
There was just one spelling error, Kim, where it talked about the UTA and the trolley. It said readership instead of ridership. I can't pull it up right here. I'd find the page. Just that little clarification.
You know which, okay.
I can find it.
No, I'll find it. Thanks. Okay, any other corrections before we adopt them?
No, but I'd second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved in second to adopt the minutes as Councilmember Fitzpatrick stated. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll move on to our municipal announcements. And while I know some of us might have some announcements, I think I am going to actually ask Ms. Tessa Vashel of the Davis Arts Council to come up first, knowing that this is kind of an important day, and let her present to us her schedule.
All right, thank you so much for inviting me, Madam Mayor and Council, everyone. It's very good to see you all. We are so excited at Davis Arts Council to have announced our 2021 summer programming this year. I brought calendars for you all. I don't know what the protocol is here, if I can pass these around, but and for anybody who's interested, these are available at davisarts.org to download. But this is a calendar outlining our summer programming. Many people are familiar with Summer Nights with the Stars, which is our kind of banner concert series. We will have 14 concerts in that series this year. Some that people are really excited about include Marie Osmond, Three Dog Night, Air Supply, Gentry, Diamond Rio. But we have a fantastic regular season. Really affordable prices too, which is something that we really focus on. Many of those concerts you can see for $10. So we are excited to welcome people in for that. In addition, we hold a concert every Sunday night at the Kenley Amphitheater, June through August. This year, we're really excited because it's all first-time Kenley performers. So we are bringing in a lot of fantastic local talent to experience our stage for the first time. And then I also am really, really excited about our movies. I think they're really fun. They kind of run the gamut. We have some romantic comedies, we have some kids movies, we have some adventure movies. And after the 4th of July, those will tie in with Fest. So while Layton Fest is going on, their themes will tie in with our movies. I know that the Parks and Rec staff was very excited when I told them the first one after the 4th of July is Jurassic Park. They got really excited about having a dinosaur day. So we are absolutely thrilled to be unveiling all of this and to be partnering with Layton City on all of this.
Well, this is exciting news. I'm glad to see that we're able to get back to having some concerts, and I know you guys did a fantastic job last year on being able to make sure we had the proper distancing, and I know that you can handle it if that's what we're faced with this year.
We're really looking forward to it, and it's looking really good from a health and safety situation. We've worked closely with the health department, and so, you know, as the next 8 weeks go on, we're going to keep an eye on it, and we're really looking forward to a great reopening.
Okay. You do a fantastic job, and we appreciate you being here in our city and running the program that you do.
I know you go through a lot of decisions, but have you made a decision on who's Step and Fetch 1 and who's Step and Fetch 2?
You know, it's still tight. We may have Step and Fetch 1 and Step and Fetch A this year.
Oh, okay. I think that'll work out.
Hey, you can't, one is number one. It's all about seniority. Okay.
Thank you very
Anybody
much.
else have any comments?
Well, I guess I would just say I had the chance last year to work with Tessa and Davis Arts Council, and she does a great job. Honestly, just top tier executive. I just couldn't be. I couldn't say you could do anything differently. We are very lucky to have you so close and to have such a good partnership with the city. And I'm just excited. This is a little bit. I mean, that's just nice and colorful, and it feels a little bit like we're getting back to some sort of sense of normalcy. I had the COVID vaccine, and now I get to show my kids that we can go watch Jurassic Park in the park. I mean, thank you for all you do for all the citizens of Layton. We appreciate all you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I mean, you have a fantastic group, and I want to say thank you to all the volunteers, because this whole I know the Arts Council functions on volunteers, and so I got to give a shout out and say thank you to all of them.
Absolutely, we do. They are wonderful, so we appreciate them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any additional municipal events or announcements? I know I got a couple I would go over, but I want to certainly give you guys first opportunity. Okay. Just two things that I really want to focus on regarding our city. One is to make sure everybody's aware of the fact that our access to Andy Adams Park on the east side, that access is going to be closed so that they can do some road construction up in that area. And hopefully it's going to be closed through the end of the month, basically, is the way that's going to go. So if anybody who frequents that area, just be aware of that. But on a more happier note, our restrooms are now open in all the parks. So thanks to the Parks and Rec Department for getting those open, and hopefully everybody will be able to get out and enjoy our parks. And that's really it, other than, do you want to talk about the Safe Harbor grand opening? Well, I'll turn some time over to Dawn since she was there.
The mayor and I had an opportunity this morning in the rain and cold. Can I say it was really cold? To attend a groundbreaking of the new Prevention and Lifeline Center for the Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Shelter. It's going to be located just north of the Layton Hospital. We had our senators and representatives that represent our state and from this area, the people from the Garn Foundation. There was a lot of people there today to support this. And dirt was turned, and construction should start, I think, fairly soon. They are in a fundraising drive and are about 75% of where the funds need to be. So if you're interested in looking a good place to spend some money, it might be contact Safe Harbor.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, if there's no more other announcements, I'll move on in the agenda. We do not have any petitions this time, but I will be willing to turn the time over to any citizens' comment. So if anyone has any comments that they'd like to come up and share, I'll entertain that at this time. Okay, seeing that there's none, Council, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent items. And with that, we've got two items. The first item will be presented by Chief Kevin Ward, and it's regarding the approval of an agreement between Davis County and well, let's just say it's about the paramedic service. I'm not going to read all that.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, I bring before you Resolution 21-19. This is to approve an agreement between Davis County, Farmington City, Fruit Heights City, Kaysville City, Clinton City, Layton City, North Davis Fire District, South Davis Metro Fire Service Area, South Weaver City, and Syracuse City regarding paramedic services. So I'll provide a little bit of a presentation here for background for you on this. So just a brief history of EMS in Davis County. Davis County Sheriff's Office used to provide ambulance service and paramedic service solely. Layton City began providing ambulance service back in 1994, and then we began providing paramedic service in 2001. Eventually, other cities picked up their ambulance services, and then South Davis Metro, as part of the agreement when they joined with Bountiful City to create the fire district, started beginning paramedic service in 2005. So we became three agencies providing all of the paramedic service within the county. Subsequent to what I further will present in this, the plan is for the Davis County Sheriff's Office will be discontinuing their paramedic service to those cities that aren't covered by the three entities I've discussed previously by 2023. Currently in Davis County, service is provided by 9 total paramedic units. 8 of which are receiving partial funding through a mill levy that was enacted, I believe, back in the early 1980. And part of that mill levy, Layton City did not start receiving that until about 2005. We operated from 2001, 2005 out of our own budget. And then with an agreement with the Sheriff's Office, that funding was provided to Layton City and South Davis Metro Fire for their units. The funding was initially distributed for 8 units. However, about 2 years ago, South Davis Metro Fire Agency put a third paramedic unit into play without any additional funding. So that's why we actually have 9 units right now. Just as a basic service comparison, the ambulances, all the ambulances within the county are provided through the various fire department agencies that I just discussed, and they are all licensed to the EMT advanced level. EMT advanced level is an intermediate level of EMT training. It allows some not only basic life support services, but some very limited advanced life support techniques, a very limited amount of medications carried and IV access. And again, all the ambulances in the county are currently licensed at that level. For the EMT paramedical, that's the highest level of medical training for the EMT paramedic. That's about 1,200 to 1,500 hours of training, which also includes about over 700 hours of field internship and clinical time spent on the rescues out in the field, and basically an internship under the direction of a field preceptor. And this includes advanced airway techniques, intubation, numerous cardiac and other medications that we carry. And again, paramedics in Layton City operate at a high level, and we have techniques and skills that we do that surpass what most of the other departments do within the state. For our response, based on what the dispatch protocol is from the call taker in the dispatch center receives the 911 call, and depending on what the chief complaint of the patient is, they will send out an ambulance, and then they'll send out a paramedic unit as needed. Currently, we have paramedic engines at Station 51 and Station 52. And then at our stations, we have an ambulance at each of our 3 stations. And Station 3 actually has a second ambulance, which right now is housed there. And when Station 4 is completed, that crew will move to Fire Station 4. So we'll have all 4 of the ambulances will be covered through that area. And then we actually have the ability for a 5th ambulance to be staffed and cross-staffed by an engine, by the engine company. What it does is it takes the engine out of service, though. And so what that does is, we at times we do need all 5 ambulances to be used. And so part of us adding another paramedic unit on will be looking at staffing up an additional ambulance for that. We do have multiple overlapping incidents within the city. At about 53.9% of the time, we actually have numerous calls come in. That's why we have the additional ambulances that we requested. And we've seen about 170% increase since 2005. The EMS increase has been pretty significant. And so we are proposing that we move forward with staffing a 3rd paramedic engine in July of 2022 or sometime thereafter. That just corresponds with the next fiscal year. And so we would put a paramedic unit in place at Station 3. So we do follow the standard of care by the state administrative code, where we have 2 paramedics on the scene of a 911 call that requires advanced life support. One of the other standards we like to look at is in the National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710, which it discusses having an advanced life support or paramedics on the scene within 9 minutes from dispatch, which counts for 8 minutes of travel time and 1 minute of what we call reflex time or queue time or turnout time to get to the scene. And so as the county has grown and the need for paramedic service and law enforcement, of course, has expanded, there's been quite an additional impact. We've seen that in terms of response times, especially in the other cities, and that's part of the issue for them wanting to provide paramedic services. They also have paramedic service currently provided by Davis County in the other cities, where they have 1 paramedic on a unit, and those paramedics go to the location in whatever city that might be in. So there's times that those paramedics could be coming from, would have to go to West Point, and they're coming from Kaysville or Farmington. And so that's just one of the other issues of response. So fire chiefs for years have been discussing about the transition of the emergency medical services of the emergency paramedic services to the different fire departments. Really in spring of 2019, it gained a little bit of steam, and as we entered the end of 2019, we had discussions with the fire chiefs and Sheriff Sparks about that transition, and he was receptive to discussing the transition over. So there were several subcommittees created in terms of coverage and service delivery and revenue and expenses. And so as we hit in 2020, there were some different study areas that were looked at by those subcommittees. And we looked at basically 4 different coverage areas within the county. We had a North Davis County area, which really included Syracuse, West Point, Sunset, Clinton, Clearfield, and portions of Hill Air Force Base. And so discussing that, there was talk of providing 3 paramedic units, 1 provided by Clinton, 1 for Syracuse, and 1 by the North Davis Fire District. Layton City, we also would pick up providing paramedic service to Hill Air Force Base. We initially had talked with providing that for South Weber, but South Weber has decided to implement their own paramedic unit, which actually changes that number to the top from 11 paramedics to actually 12 paramedics units throughout the county. And then the Central Davis County area with Kaysville, Fruit Heights, and Farmington, would have 2 units, one provided by Kaysville Fire Department, one by Farmington, and then South Davis Metro Fire would continue to serve their 5-city service area with their 3 paramedic units. There's a county map. Why don't you click on that real quick, and I'll just show this. The reason I show you this map, it's a little hard for you to see unless you've got it right in front of you there, but the whole point of this map is that this shows the distribution of where paramedic units would be, and this gives us the coverage that we are looking for in terms of that 9-minute response. And so this is all blended in with all the different, where the different paramedic units would be. The point is all of the county is entirely covered, and there you can see Layton City and our coverage, be able to cover all of our cities with our paramedic units. So you can click out of that. So one of the goals we're looking for as we move with this program and everybody providing the service within the different fire departments is a move towards a borderless system where regardless of geopolitical boundaries, there will be response, and we'll continue with our mutual aid agreements, but eventually look at getting to where we have automatic aid, where the closest unit is dispatched by the automatic vehicle locator in it. We currently in Layton City, we're really the only one in Davis County that does that. Our dispatchers send the closest unit, whether it's an ambulance or paramedic unit, to the scene. The automatic vehicle locator determines that, and then the dispatchers dispatch the closest unit for that to help decrease our response times. The other thing we wanted to make sure was we had good countywide training of our paramedics, that we had good continuity, so we had all the paramedics were trained at the same level, that we were all operating together, and it's a goal we have to kind of raise that standard of care up throughout the county. The paramedic response units, one of the things we agreed upon is the fire departments wouldn't just put paramedics on ambulances. What they would do is they would actually staff up a separate unit as a paramedic squad. That would be like a utility truck, pickup truck with a utility bed, and run that as a paramedic squad. You may have seen those running around. That would be the goal, instead of putting them on an ambulance, because ambulances, then they'd be tied up on a lot of basic calls where it would take that paramedic unit out of service. And so we'll continue to operate with paramedic engines, as will South Davis Metro Fire, and that allows for the same possibility to where that it keeps the ambulances reserved, where they'll do all the transports. We'll just put paramedics on them when aboard and ride with the patient in as needed. So the Davis County EMS Council will also continue to operate as part of the oversight. That's represented by all the fire chiefs in the county, and that in conjunction with that, we'll be able to make sure that any problem situations that come up, that we can get those handled through the county. So right now with the transition timeline, just to highlight a couple things on that. This has been discussed with many city councils. I believe this agreement has now been signed by 7 entities right now. So we're in the number 2 phase of adopting the interlocal agreement. Part of the other portion of this is what we call the public information effort. Due to the fact that we've received a mill levy from the county since 1980, we've been receiving payments since 2005. And now, as that paramedic mill levy is being shifted from the county and going to the cities, we will take over that mill levy. So the plan is that our citizens will pay the exact same amount to Layton City under their property tax that they currently pay the county. So there won't be an increase in the amount that they pay. It's just that the transition is you won't pay it to the county, you'll pay it to Layton City, and we'll have that direct the funds there. Again, that helps pay for the portions of the services. So as the county eliminates that paramedic tax levy in this next year, we'll be further discussions about that and the time frame and as to when that happens. So the cities will continue to pay for county paramedic service until the other cities, I should say, will continue to pay for county paramedic service until that service is disbanded. Right now, some of the other fire departments are already bringing up their staffing. They're sending people to paramedic school. They're hiring some personnel that are paramedics and acquiring the necessary equipment. And so the plan is that the Davis County Sheriff's Department would drop their service by the end of 2022 or January of 2023. And sometime along that time frame in 2022, the various cities will pick up their paramedic service. So this doesn't affect us because we already provide our own service. So. Staff would recommend that the council adopt Resolution 21-19 and authorize the mayor to sign the necessary documents.
Okay, council, do you have any questions?
I have a couple, Chief Ward. So you talk about a unit, a paramedic unit. How many paramedics, there's 2 on it at a time, but how many paramedics do you need to staff one unit?
Well, with leave coverage and things like that, you'd really basically have to have for a single paramedic unit, you'd have to have at least a minimum of 9, just because you have to have 2 on a day. And taking into account leave coverage and things like that, that would be the minimum.
Yeah, and I think that's important to know when we're talking 4 units, we're talking 36 paramedics. I mean, that's a huge number, I think, for the city and for the residents to realize that, we've got a good crew coming or being utilized through the.
Absolutely.
So.
And we do have a high number of paramedics with the fact that we're able to, with paramedic engines, as firefighters promote to engineer and captain, they still maintain their paramedic license and still function as paramedics on a paramedic engine. Places that run squads, typically that paramedic no longer, when they promote to an engineer and drive the engine or they become a captain on the engine, they no longer function as a paramedic. And so we utilize this as a great career ladder where we're able to maintain, and we have multiple captain paramedics and engineer paramedics on our department.
Well, from a citizen's perspective, I'm grateful that we have this good of level of medical care within our community. Just hope I don't need you guys, but and then I just have a quick question. So the fact that UDOT has a highway that goes right down the middle of us and one coming out on the west of us, will we provide the services for those segments of, and I don't know how it currently works. I know Highway Patrol responds, but I don't know who goes medical or accidents, if you guys do or somebody else does. Or?
No, absolutely we do. We provide the services anywhere within our licensed geographic boundary, which is anywhere within Layton City, whether it's unincorporated area or state highways or wherever. And then additionally, we'll pick up that portion of Hill Air Force Base as well.
I think your key word that you spoke of earlier is it's borderless, that really to make this one big cohesive unit, regardless where you're at, you got to just think of it as a borderless operation. But certainly we have the concentration here in our city,
Yep.
and we appreciate what you've done.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
A question, Madam Mayor. Just a funding question, just thought about it. As far as Hill Air Force Base, I get the other residents in the counties, we get our property tax, we pay our property tax, but on the base, I'm assuming that's different with those residents on the base. Does that funding come through the base itself, the installation, or how does the funding work?
Well, currently Layton City has an agreement with the 75th Medical Group to provide ambulance service. So currently we provide ambulance service. As of May 1st, Hill Air Force Base will take over their own ambulance service. And then when the Davis County Sheriffs right now provide paramedic service, so when they no longer provide that, we will provide that. We don't assess them a fee for this. They don't get paid. They don't pay for us just to be there. They pay per response. If our paramedics respond up there, and our paramedics provide paramedic level care, then there is a rate that's established by the State of Utah Bureau of EMS that provides for reimbursement. Well, provides payment for Layton City for the paramedic services rendered. So, fortunately, that's the number of paramedic calls on the base that we would respond to would be fairly minimal. It could be 10 to 12, 15, maybe a month at the absolute most, where it's actually a paramedic level response. So, yeah, there's no, being a federal institution, there's really no other way for us to do that, but that's how we do it with them. Thanks.
Chief, I just wanted to say thanks for having such a great staff. This is a countywide function, and we've kind of blazed the trail in Layton long before I got here in making sure that this is kind of the gold standard. This is how cities should operate. They should have a paramedic, and they should be able to take care of their own. So I think just the fact that the county is able to have this option to be able to get out of the system is because Layton has been doing it for a long time, and we can kind of help people. And for citizens, it's important for them to know that we don't know where you're going to be when you might have some sort of incident, right? If you're in Layton, we know you're going to get taken care of because we really value paramedic services here. But if you're in Syracuse seeing your kids, or if you're in Farmington and shopping, or if you're in South Weber, we want to make sure that everybody gets raised by the same tide. And I think that this is just a good thing for the citizens to know that we want everybody to be able to have the same coverage and care wherever they might have one of these incidents happen. And so thanks for the leadership in getting this, and staff too. And Alex, I know you've been doing a lot of work on this. It's going to be better for the community at large because we care about Layton, but we also care about our neighbors in the other communities. Absolutely. And we want to make sure that they're getting the coverage as well. And so thanks for leading out on this and for all the fire department does.
Yeah, appreciate it. We have great staff. That's what makes this whole thing work. So appreciate all that our staff does to make this work. So, and thank you for your support as well.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number B, which is a preliminary plan for the Fairfield Place townhomes. And our economic director, Mr. Chad Wilkinson, will present that.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll shock you with the mustache real quick here before we get going.
Oh,
this mustache is brought to you by the Centerpoint Legacy Theater at the Davis Performance Center for the Performing Arts. That was hard to get out that time. This application that's before you is, as was said, is for a preliminary plan for Fairfield Place townhomes. The location of that development is there on the map. You can see that red dot representing the approximate location. 682 North Fairfield Road. The land use ordinance authorizes the city council as the land use authority for preliminary plans for townhome developments in the CTH zone. That's why we're here to talk tonight. This is, again, just a little bit more detail on the location of the property. You can see the property there, right in this location. This was the subject of a fairly recent, several months ago in November, the council approved a zone change to CTH for this property, about 1.2 acres, as you can see. The preliminary plan that was submitted is consistent with the conceptual plan that was shown at that time. There's 19 units shown there on the development plan. You can see this is served by some private streetways there that goes through the development. These are rear-loaded units, so the unit's interior will face onto a common landscaped area. Just show you the elevations, the proposed elevations of the development. These are two-story townhomes. The Planning Commission has reviewed this request for preliminary plan approval, and they are recommending that the City Council approve this request for preliminary plan approval for this property, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions? None?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, that actually concludes our consent items. So I will look for a motion regarding our consent items, both A and B, at this time.
Okay,
Somebody needs to
I will. I thought it since I spoke last time. Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items. The agreement between Davis County, and I'm not going to, all of the other listed cities, regarding the paramedic services resolution 2119A, and then the preliminary plan for the Fairfield Place townhomes at 682 North Fairfield Road.
Thank you. Second. Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve the consent items, both A and B as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There you have it. It's unanimous. Okay, we have no public hearing, and as far as unfinished business?
I should have done this while the chief was still here, but maybe you can fill in for him. If not, I was in a meeting the other day with the chief, and I was just going to have him explain. We're really fortunate talking about our fire department and how good the officers are and the leadership, that Chief Ward has been appointed to the 988 Commission to help designate the phone number for the suicide prevention hotline. can you add anything to that, or just that he's been put on, he's been put on the committee, but again, I think that shows that we've got some outstanding leadership and really value their opinion and stuff, throughout the entire state. So I'm thrilled to see he's on that.
I would echo that. That's very good. I'm glad you remembered. Okay. I believe that then brings our meeting to a conclusion. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Dave, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks you for attending.